All right, thank you for staying with the Monday Report. You're just in time for the town hall session live at the Strathmore University, which holds the KCIC, that is the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. We've enabled us to have this conversation. It's a very important conversation. We're talking about waste management in Kenya. Now, the Aspen Network for Development Entrepreneurs says this is approximated to be a $54 billion economy here in Kenya. We produce from about 3,000 to 4,000 tons of waste every day, 70% of that being organic. But how come we're not benefiting from waste? Where do the gaps lie? This is the conversation we're having here on the town hall session. Let me start by introducing my guest from my immediate right, Joseph Murabula, CEO, Kenya Climate Innovation Center. Thank you so much for making time. Dr. Ayub Macharia is here, Director Enforcement, NEMA. Thank you very much for making time. Ibrahim Otieno, County Chief Officer Environment, Nairobi County. Thank you very much for making time. Benson Abila, Founder and CEO, M-Taka. Asante sana for making time. And Benjamin Malwa, Chairman, Environment Society of Kenya. Thank you very much for making time. And Murabula, I'll start with you on this. What is the state of waste management in Kenya today? How would you describe it?
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. As you mentioned at the beginning, Kenya produces about anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 tons of waste every day. The bulk of this is in the urban centers, the main urban nodes of Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, Nakuru, Kisumu. But about half of that, half of the 3,000 to 4,000 tons of waste produced daily is actually Nairobi. Because it's the most urbanized city. So basically what we are saying is that waste management appears to be an urban challenge, a challenge that's mostly around cities. For a very long time, the model has always been that the waste is produced, you get somebody with a truck to come and pick it and then dispose it off, and then what happens beyond there is unknown or is nobody's business. But as you mentioned, people are now seeing opportunities around waste management sector. You just mentioned that the market opportunity is about $54 billion. What you didn't say and what that number shows is that probably that's the most promising sector of all the green sectors we have. The 54 billion is probably a bigger market opportunity than you have in agribusiness, than you have in renewable energy, than you have in water, or probably than you have in forestry. What then that means is that a lot of people are beginning to see this opportunity and to find ways of accessing this opportunity. So in terms of regulation, we know that first of all, we have the Constitution, which guarantees a healthy and clean environment to everybody. That in itself is a trigger to action. But we have the Sustainable Waste Management Act of 2022, which provides quite a number of things in terms of what we should do. Yeah. But ultimately, the waste management is supposed to be a devolved function under Schedule 4 of the Constitution, and therefore what we expect is that the counties will be doing a lot more to enable waste management to happen, to enable people to have a cleaner environment, and basically to enable people get this opportunity. Quite a lot of responsibilities given to counties under the law, under the Sustainable Waste Management Act. For instance, it provides that every county should ensure that whatever waste is produced within its boundaries is processed within that boundary. So if you take that with logical conclusion, it means that the counties have got to provide the infrastructure. So the challenge we have then is not that we don't have appropriate policies in place. I think the challenge you have is one of enforcement, and I'm sure Ayub here will probably be speaking to that. The second challenge we have is that waste management has been left to the public sector largely because the efficiencies that the private sector would bring are still missing. The other challenge we then have is that we just don't have sufficient infrastructure in place especially at county level. We don't have sufficient material recovery facilities. We don't have sufficient processing facilities to be able to take care of waste and ensure a clean environment. Okay. So I would say, in summary, the state of waste management in this country is still nascent, is still growing. People are beginning to discover their place. So there's quite a bit of discovery and experimentation going on.
Okay. Macharia, what are you seeing as the gaps when it comes to waste management in the country? You've been dealing with this for quite some time, and Murabula has mentioned some of them.
Thank you. I think we can say that Kenya has had the environment law since 1999. And so we may ask ourselves, then why is the country still dirty? That means there were some gaps. And the main gap was the ideological gap. There was an ideological gap where in the early years, from 1999 to 2022, if you manage to just put your waste in the bin and give it to a truck, and that waste is taken to the dump site, you are okay. You have complied with the law. And so the rest was, we kept complaining that, hey, the dump sites are getting bigger and bigger. They require more land. They are speeding over to the neighboring estates. The people are dumping in long places. But without a proper law, then we could not address the matter because that is as far as we could go. Some people even tried to segregate waste at their homes. But the waste, when the truck came, it just got mixed up and they got discouraged. However, the landscape has changed since 2022. Actually, 2021. 2021 is when we finalized, the government published the policy, the Sustainable Waste Management Policy. And then in 2022, Parliament passed then the Sustainable Waste Management Act. And that act marked a radical shift in waste management because waste was considered as a resource. And therefore, we are supposed to see waste as a resource that we can tap into and convert it back into a useful resource. And that applies to all waste, whether it is organic. It was supposed to not to go to the dump site anymore. The government decided to put an intermediate facility in between what we knew as dump site and the homes, and that is the material recovery facility. Even the name says it. We want to recover as much as possible. That is a radical shift in ideology that came in 2022. And so one of the gaps we had was segregation. We didn't have a law to support segregation. And what if you don't segregate? There was no penalty. Of course, the word segregation is there in the waste management regulation of 2006, but then there is no penalty, or the penalty is too big. Now, if you don't segregate waste at home, there is a fine of 20,000. That applies to everybody. And then the other challenge is counties. Not that counties were a problem, but they are also overwhelmed. Look at the kind of products that come to Kenya, from especially imports. They come to counties. Counties have also never seen such kind of products. We don't have such kind of technologies in this country. And so, if we continued like that, we would remain overwhelmed. And so, what the law said in Section 13 is that Kenya is an open market. You can bring anything you want, so long as you are responsible for that product, for that packaging, until it is safely disposed, safely removed from the environment. And that was very important, because being responsible means that you will contribute resources. You avail the resources to do collection, to do transportation, and to do recycling, and even final disposal. That used to be left to the counties before, and they didn't have resources. Now it is the responsibility of the producers to provide these resources through extended producer responsibility. And so what that has done to the counties, and that is why the landscape has changed, is that the counties are now only responsible for organic waste, not for synthetics. Synthetics is the responsibility of the producer, the person who brought those items into the country. Okay. And so we have addressed the major gaps. Of course, to the Mwananchi, let me point this, that the radical shift has also impacted us on Mwananchi. Because at home we are used to, you get your waste and put it in the bin. Now, since the synthetics are owned by the producer, then we all need to think twice, because the waste management in Kenya will be driven by incentives. So there is already an incentive to be provided by the producer, so that if you don't put your waste in the bin, you can easily take it to the collection center, to the material recovery facility, and you'll be compensated for waste collection service, so that you can go home with a loaf of bread or a packet of salt.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me bring in Otieno on this. Are you overwhelmed as counties, like Macharia is saying?
Trevor, thank you for having me. I don't think we are overwhelmed as counties or as a county government of Nairobi to deal with the issue of waste management. Of course, there are a lot of challenges, as rightly been mentioned by my two colleagues earlier, but we are also trying to address those challenges. What Macharia has also tried to allude to is that the development of these PROs, so the producer responsibility organizations, that will be dealing with products that are coming into the country. So that, I think, is at the very formative stages, and still, of course, the county government has to deal with that waste as at today. Again, we look back just before we came to the policy and the 2022 Act on Sustainable Solid Waste Management. The county government actually had already started, and I think Macharia and quite a number of people that I've seen in this room were part of the people that developed the Sustainable Waste Action Plan for the city of Nairobi. So actually it is from that argument that we actually thought now this should be not just about Nairobi County, but it should be thought at national government level. And therefore now we have the Sustainable Waste Management Act in place. Yes, we have, in fact, one of the key challenges I think that has been mentioned here in terms of waste management within the city and probably in the entire country is that people don't segregate their wastes, and therefore when it's not segregated, the value of that waste comes down. So that segregation part of it, then under the Solid Waste Management Act of 2022, will ensure that the value of waste that we have at the household level goes up, and therefore there is value in that waste, and therefore people will be willing to do segregation, and because they will be able to get some resources from that particular waste when it's segregated. In addition, we also have seen in Nairobi alone, there's a lot of challenges that we have faced with illegal dumpers of waste, because again, there is no value in that waste. So somebody will just want to throw it away because at the end of the day, it's a nuisance to them. What has also been mentioned by my first speaker is that the amount of waste that is generated in the country. In fact, Nairobi alone, and this is based on studies that were done by JICA in 2010, and of course we also did a study with UN Habitat in 2019. Right now in 2023, we generate 3,200 tons of waste within Nairobi alone. So if you're generating therefore 4,000 within the entire country, then it means almost 80% of that waste is in Nairobi. The 3,200 tons that we generate, about 60% of it is organic, so it's wet. And that is where when the waste is mixed, then we have now the challenge of devaluing of recyclables within the wastes. And one of the interventions in the Sustainable Waste Action Plan that I mentioned that was developed with stakeholders was to do material recovery facilities. The county government of Nairobi has started to do two. One is in Mudhurwa Market. We are doing another one in Kagundo Road in Molem. But actually, we are getting support to do a third one with the UN Habitat team in Korogosho. Because we also realized in areas where we have a lot of trouble with waste segregation is in the informal settlements, which actually forms the larger part of the city. So those are the kind of issues that we are dealing with. And I think that was some of the challenges that I think we are doing and the interventions that the county government has taken.
How come dealing with the Dandora dump site has been a thorn in the flesh for all the county governments in Nairobi?
Dandora dam site, of course, has existed since some of us were not born. It was a disused quarry that started to receive waste from a population of about 2 million. Right now, the city of Nairobi has a population of maybe between 4 and 6, depending on the time of the day. So it means the waste generation, of course, has gone up. And the only long-term solution for that particular place for us to be able to decommission the final disposal, which is Dandora dam site, and get a better way of dealing with the waste, because currently what we are doing is open disposal of waste. So the county government, of course, continuing what was started previously under the last regime, is to trying to do the waste-to-energy plant. It is already a process that is on. We are at some stages, and hopefully it will be concluded so that, of course, we can use part of the legacy waste that is already existing in the dam site, and, of course, the fresh waste that will be brought in. You remember that, of course, Dandora having existed within Dandora for a very long time, and, of course, I think the governor's idea was these are the people that have suffered longer having this waste here. Initially, the plant was to be done in Ruai, but he said, no, it has to be done where people have already suffered longer because of that waste, and therefore they should be the first beneficiaries of that particular plant if it makes run.
Okay, do we have a timeline for this?
Yes, we have a timeline. The construction period for that particular plant, as proposed, is around 2.5 years. So, of course, we are still in the stages of procurement, but once that is concluded, then maybe within 2.5 years, we should be having a plant up and running. Okay.
Yes. Abila, you're part of the team that saw the opportunities in waste management. What did it take for you to get to where you are, and what came to your mind when you're looking for these opportunities? How did you just decide that this is the direction I want to take? Because it's only now that most of us are talking about waste management and the 54 billion USD economy.
True. Well, my story begins, I was passionate about waste management right from university. But when I finished college, I worked a lot with vulnerable groups. So that was Street Connected Youth and Women and Kisumu. And part of our work was to, improve their livelihoods and give them opportunities to sort of survive, right? And when we dug a little bit deeper, we understood that 80% of this population are waste workers. So we started understanding what are the challenges in this space, right? And we understood that the roles that they play within the sector are bottom chain, right? They're scavengers. They're literally trying to survive from the waste sector. So we wanted to understand why is it a challenge yet so many young people are unemployed, so much waste is being generated, over 3,000 tons, and we wanted to understand how then can we shift this big problem into an opportunity, right? And if you look at the waste sector currently, a lot of the stakeholders here will tell you that there's a lot of waste being generated and there's a big opportunity, but they don't tell you the true picture of the gap in people getting involved in waste work. It is not as rewarding as we want to put it across, right? And the people currently who are in the waste sector, it is considered undignified, right? How many times do you walk into a space where people are handling waste and you see a woman putting on a gear and saying, I am proud to be a waste collector? It's not an everyday sort of picture, right? But where is that gap, right? So we understood that even if you look at some of the opportunities that enable people benefit from waste, which is recycling, of the 3,000 tons generated, 70% is collected, of course. 50% ends up in the dump site, but only 20% is recycled. So we need to understand, why is the recycling culture low? If you look at plastics alone, only 9% is recycled. So we understood that the gap really lied in people understanding waste management, the consumer behavior, right? So he says that once you mix waste, and then you mix the organic waste and the dry waste, then the value goes down, right? But why does that happen? It's because at the source, where we have the households, there is no separation. So of the gaps we identified that then we built a solution for was that there was limited separation of waste at source. There was undignified waste sector that we had to then make it very attractive and very friendly for young people to get involved in. And then finally, there was an issue of course, policy enforcement, which is a gap in data. So what we built as an intervention is just, we leverage technology. And I love what Director Ayub talked about, incentivizing action, right? We understood that the only way to make the sector as rewarding and as inclusive and as dignifying for the key stakeholder that does the work, which is the waste picker and the waste collector, was if we incentivized, right? So we built a tool that allows the household who is doing this work to be rewarded, so they're able to separate at source. We built a system that allowed the waste collector to be trained, to be given gears, to be given the right tools to recover this resource. And then we collaborated with the county, because Kisumu has done quite tremendous work. And they've set up, I think, one of the first county established MRFs, right? They have about 5 right now. And we collaborated with the county to then optimize this facility. And as we aggregate to this facility and we're able to get margins on the recyclables, are we able to then ensure that this can transfer back to the household to take action, but most importantly, give the waste collector, the waste picker, a fair wage, right? If you're talking about earning 15 shillings or 20 shillings, can this go high up to 30 shillings? Because plastic started at 10, 15 shillings when it started, but right now in Kisumu, it's about 30, 35 shillings. That tells you there's a shift, right? So our intention was that get the price higher, get it fair, reward the people involved in the process, and then it presents an opportunity. So that's how we were able to build, and I'm happy to say that having trained over 200 people, having impacted over 4,000 community members with our work, we have women who now are proud to become MTACA agents, because then I am rewarded to take time off my work to pick recyclables, take it to the facility and earn from it.
Great. How big is your workforce right now?
So we have a team of 5, but then for the people that work, we have about 25. We call them waste workers that support our work.
So it's also a source of employment for most people.
Definitely, and I think indirectly we've impacted over 150 people, because you see, recycling is a whole ecosystem. It's collective action, right?
Value chain.
It's a whole value chain, and for us to even operate a facility, we ensure that you have to also buy from small aggregators. So we are tapping, as we introduce technology in the sector, we are also understanding that there is an existing value chain that existed, and we're just complementing that.
All right. Malwa, what do you see as the gaps here? Because it seems we are pushing this back to the consumer, who doesn't seem to be able to segregate the waste and therefore devaluing their waste in the process.
I think let me start from the basic, so that people understand this magnitude of waste in this country. And for people to understand it, we define waste as any material or substance that the owner has found no value at that particular time. How many forms of waste do we have? That is a problem in this country. We have solid waste, we have wastewater, which is effluent, and we have emissions. Under solid waste, we have 2 types of waste. We have what we call hazardous waste, and we have now the normal, which is non-hazardous waste. The laws that we have in this country currently, hazardous waste is being regulated by NEMA, national government. And now, under the MCA 2022, they have given the responsibility of managing the non-hazardous waste, which in quotes we are saying garbage, to the counties. So as a country, you can see, we have problems with garbage. Basic. What of hazardous waste? If waste is a problem, garbage that we are generating, what of effluent that is coming from industries? What of emissions that is coming from industries? So we have a big problem in this country that we need really, as a country, to have a conversation on this. And my friend Macharia is talking of MCA 1922. We have gone through that law. That law is not enforceable. In fact, it needs to be repealed. It's not enforceable. It gives a lot of responsibilities to the counties, and there's no enforcement mechanism. How will you make sure that those counties will provide the various collection centers, the various containers that you need to separate, because they need to provide that? Who will enforce that? So that law, as far as we are concerned, some of us, especially for the Environment Society of Kenya, that law is not enforceable. It needs to be repealed. My colleague from Nairobi County is talking of turning Dondora energy, waste to energy. that project is not sustainable. Why? If you have to have an incinerator that converts waste to energy, you need to look at the composition of the waste you are generating. Yeah? The best waste that can give you what we call calorific